Hi, Barbara. Oh, I think you're on mute.
That helps, right?
Yes, that's great. Also, should I call you Barbara or Barb? Which do you prefer?
Barb is great.
Barb. Okay, great. Great. Well, thank you for joining me on this call. And sorry about the confusion a little bit earlier. I was like, oh no, I hope that I didn't get the time
No,
wrong
no,
and that this will still work for you. Okay.
I've had so many experiences of trying to get into a meeting at the last minute and then going, oh my gosh.
It's very real, especially in this day and age
Oh,
of
yes.
Zoom. Yeah. Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this call this morning, this Friday morning. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Cara. I'm a researcher at National Geographic Learning. And today we're going to talk a little bit about assignments and how you create them and why. It's just going to be an open conversation, just so that as we update or re-examine the way that we make or do assignments, we make sure they align with what teachers need. So folks like you. So, before we jump in, you might have noticed this Zoom is being live streamed. It's just being live streamed to an unlisted YouTube link, so my teammates can view it without being distracting. Um, so so
You
there's
don't scare me.
okay, great. Post it anywhere. No, just
Yeah,
kidding.
post it anywhere.
Hear your wisdom.
Mhm.
Great. And great. So then would you mind would you mind if I record this video and that would just be for my notes, just so I don't forget something you said or if
Not
I
a
need to refer
problem.
to it? Okay.
Not a problem at all.
Okay.
I will not give you my bank account numbers.
That is good. You should. From the many trainings on cybersecurity I've done, I know that's a bad thing.
Oh, please. They're sending us now like 2-minute trainings from
Wow. Yeah.
our network guys. They're
Mhm.
actually very good, but
That's
you know,
good.
it's constant stream of, okay, another one. Just a reminder, don't
Mhm.
click on it.
Yeah. Yeah. There was once my company did a fake phishing email and it was like a test. And then if you clicked on it, then it was like, oh, by the way, you shouldn't have clicked on that. Go do this other training. So which I thought was actually surprisingly clever.
Mhm.
But great. So okay, so before we jump into things, also I just want to confirm a couple of things. So I just want to make sure. So can you confirm with me the grades that you teach and the subjects that you teach?
11 and 12,
Okay.
and I'm at a technical school.
Okay.
And I teach, the course name is Digital Media Design,
Okay.
which is a combination of graphic design,
Mhm.
some print production, plus web apps, um, pretty
Okay.
broad based.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay. And do you use any sort of learning management system or like Canvas or Schoology or Google Classroom, anything like that for your school?
I use Moodle.
Moodle. Okay, great. And do you use any sort of digital curriculum or something from publishers like that?
The only ones that I use regularly is the geometric system for test preparation
Okay.
uh, for um, for the Adobe exams.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
and I find those to be wonderful. But at this point, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I build my own.
Yeah. Okay.
um,
Makes sense.
but one of the things that I'm thinking about is the course moving forward,
Mhm.
making sure that there is, eventually I'm going to retire.
Mhm.
And one of my goals towards that is making sure that there is a clear curriculum with resources that a new person coming in can handle.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So sort of like prepping for the next person
Yep.
to jump into things. Great.
Yep.
Very, very forward thinking for the next person then. Great. So I want to ask you then a little bit about the last time you scheduled assignments for your class. Or just in general, like, can you tell me like what was the last assignment you scheduled them or you gave to them, and tell me about how did you make it, like your thought process as you went through that.
I use daily, um,
Okay.
beginning, bell ringer um, questions that I usually do in a discussion board format.
Okay.
And so, there'll be either a preview of what's coming or a review of what we've covered before. And they're basically something that's, designed as a bell ringer to be a really snap kind of thing. And what I need in that is basically to be able to quickly assess where
Mhm.
the students are at before I start the
Okay.
instruction for the day. Do I need to pedal backwards or do I need to go forwards? That is super streamlined and super efficient,
Mhm.
because it is, as I said, using an open forum format,
Okay.
allows not only me to be considering what's going on, but also the rest of the class at the same time. And it also allows for students who may not be in the classroom to sign in.
Mhm.
One of the things we do is we have kids from 17 sending schools,
Okay.
and schedules sometimes get convoluted, shall we say.
Mhm.
So there's the expectation that, hey, you can just log on and be with us anyway. Um,
Okay.
in terms of larger assignments, as I said, I do a lot of graphics assignments and I do a lot of coding assignments.
Mhm.
And those can be kind of tricky because the graphic assignments tend to produce large file sizes. And
Mm.
oftentimes
Yeah.
to,
Mhm.
to see what I'm looking for in terms of the understanding
Mhm.
of the work, I need to see them in an uncompressed format. So,
Okay.
just the
Yeah.
idea of, save them to the smallest JPEG file you can,
Mhm.
doesn't really work because, um, say I'm working in Photoshop with the kids.
Yeah.
I really want to see if you're working in the layers effectively.
Mhm.
Are you labeling your layers?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Right. Right.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's been a hurdle and it still is. Um, you know,
So
finding.
how
Mhm.
so how have you addressed that then thus far?
One of the things that I do when it's really critical that I'm
Mhm.
I'm looking at that is that I make sure that the assignment is given in a low enough resolution with few enough layers that the kids can resubmit it
Mhm.
in its native form. But of course, then what happens is that they automatically sink in on the fact, why is this so low res?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, why is my type looking funny? That kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it sometimes leads to more questions
Mhm.
and the artificiality of it as well.
Mhm.
So
Okay. And so make sure I'm understanding correctly. So you have these two different kinds of assignments, right? There's these assignments that are the graphic design or the large like Photoshop files or whatnot that you give to the students. And then there's also you mentioned the dailies. And that sounded like it was a forum, right? Like a conversation forum, or is that a incorrect understanding of that?
yes, it's a written
Okay.
forum, but it,
Oh, it's
it,
a
it
written
is
forum.
open and it's public. No, yeah, public within the class.
Okay. And you
Um,
said that. Mhm, sure.
and depending on the day, it may require responses between the students as part of
Mhm.
the assignment. So
Okay. So is this class an online or is it face to face?
it is face to face.
Okay.
But even before COVID, it was one of those courses where there was the expectation, as I said, schedules that can be convoluted, um, bus transportation that can get in the way,
Hmm.
who has a snow day, who doesn't.
Hmm.
Um, there's always been a pretty strong presence um, of virtual as needed.
Hmm.
It was one of those things when COVID happened.
Yeah.
It was okay. We just switched to virtual, no
Hmm.
problem. But I've also taught online before, so exclusively online before,
Okay.
um, and so you just switch your mode.
Hmm.
Um, takes the students a little while to get used to it. Takes me a little while to rev up again,
Right. Yeah.
but uh, but it works.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. And so then you said that you use these forums to identify like potential areas that you need to cover before you go into the class. Is that just through like reading what the students are responding and how they're responding to the questions that you do that, or is there some other way that you do that?
It's primarily through reading, but also since most of the kids are in class every day,
Hmm.
it's also seeing the either shocked or, oh, this is easy look on their face as they're
Hmm.
doing it.
Okay.
Okay, so there's both those in-person cues
Right.
and the written cues, and
Mhm.
one of the other things is that, sometimes you'll see a group that's, ready to move on and a group that's not ready to move on. And sometimes what will happen is that kids will try to explain things to each other
Mm,
in
yeah.
order to, hey, let's keep it moving.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, definitely. And then how many assignments do you typically schedule at any given time, and like how far ahead do you schedule them?
okay, so as I said, there's at least 5 weekly
Mhm,
writing prompts. Um, Usually there's a quiz
mhm,
on the content.
mhm,
Um, there every week there are 2 to 3 what I call short assignments, which are basically, you know, developing a skill
mhm,
or an understanding, or I mean, it can be anything from um, reading theory or reading content to
mhm.
and answering a few questions um, to actually doing short exercises in software
Okay.
or in design work. And then there's always a major project going on underneath, and those
Okay.
usually go 2 to 3 weeks. Um,
Okay.
we have 2.5 hour classes, so um, the time is sort of divided between those things. And then we also take in outside work in the classroom, primarily for the print lab,
Mhm.
um, which is, basically real projects that have to go out on deadline. So our scheduling is very, very flexible.
Okay.
Um, it's not uncommon for me to say, okay, you have an extra 2 days on a project,
Mhm.
or let's skip this for today and do something else.
So since it sounds like there's a couple different assignments going on at a given time, maybe that like underline that main project as well as like the forums and the other sort of the short exercises and things like that. How do you typically like organize and check in on all of these assignments? How do you keep it all moving along?
That's why I have the Moodle. Um, a solid LMS is critical, and I will say this too with particularly, when COVID started boiling up, and even before that, there was this tendency to go towards like a Google Classroom kind of a context. And what happens with that is that since it's not a well-rounded LMS,
Mhm,
um, it's sort of shrunk down so that you're really not able to flip back and forth between multiple assignments at a time, because you're looking at one stream,
yeah.
and it's very, very easy to lose things in that. Whereas, with a more structured LMS, you can move things up and down a lot easier. The
Mhm,
communication's a lot more fluid.
mhm,
Um, you can, every time you make an announcement in class, you can also back it up um, with a message to kids
mhm,
that are saying, hey, this change happened, that will automatically pop for them when they next log in, which
mhm.
is a much more helpful thing than, with Google. What I find is that it's so one thing at a time
Mhm,
that that's not particularly helpful. And I found the same thing when I have used other online curricula.
mhm,
Um, One of the real keys to doing anything that is, um, you know, technology guided
mhm,
in terms of, distributing and collecting assignments, is that you need to have a way to keep the communication very clear
yeah.
and
Mhm,
flexible enough for the students to work with it. I remember back using, I'm going to use the nasty term, but canned curriculum,
mhm,
where it was so clearly, assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, assignment 4, and kind of just cumbersome
mhm. Yeah.
to switch it up. Um, and to substitute something in. Like, so for example, if chapter 3 was something that you had a good sense that your class had a grasp on, and didn't need the full chapter, being able to, instruct and assess, the one or two items in chapter 3 that were really critical, and then have them not do the busy work of, we've already, we get this.
So is that to say that you would then go in, so say, like you're saying, you chapter 3, they're getting, and you just need to check on critical concepts. Like, is there, do you ever do changes to those assignments? Like, midstream or
Absolutely, yes.
okay. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So what kind of changes then do you typically, would you typically do?
Well, I'll give an example. We were just doing an advertising project, and it was, a large size lengthy thing. And I said 300 words of copy in the piece, in the set.
Yeah.
And, one of the kids came back and said, again,
Okay.
300 words. And I said, no, see if you can do it in no more than 70.
Yeah.
Because the idea of writing short was, it was one of those things where it was an on the fly switch, because every kid in the room has written 300 words over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And either they can or they can't. And, just switching it up at that moment. And, being able to, go in even after some students had submitted.
Yeah. And then, so from the flip side of that, sort of moving to the like the student perspective, is there anything about the assignments that you feel students need to know about them as they're coming up? Like, what are the key pieces of information you feel students should know and be able to access about their assignments?
Number one, they need to know the parameters of the assignment. Is it what is the assignment, and clarity in terms of what is it to do. I'm a great believer in, even if you're throwing them a set of multiple choice questions, you put instructions at the top and say, please answer each multiple choice question. Because, sometimes you think it's apparent to everyone and it may not be. So, the clear parameters of the assignment. Due dates are critical for kids. I would like to see kids be able to get away from them and understand the idea of, you're given an assignment, you just do it, because I'm trying to teach workplace readiness. But at 17 and 18, kids don't have the foresight to do that yet. So they need to know those things. They also need to have really clear resources as to, if you're running into trouble, these are some steps you can take to fix that. And that can be as simple as linking a vocabulary bank to an assignment. It can be linking content, going back to, saying, hey, take a look at, section, chapter 3, section 2, if you're having trouble here, those kinds of things. So lots of clues along the way. And for two reasons. Number one, it builds their independence as a learner. And number two, it saves me a lot of time of saying the same thing to 1/3 of the class.
Yeah.
And lets kids have the answers to, how to approach something right there.
Yeah. Sort of speaking of that, asking, answering that question over and over, is there anything, apart, I mean, obviously from the things that you mentioned, is there any common questions you get from students about assignments? Like, is there something that just comes up every time and you just feel like you're answering it 1,000 times?
Yes, and in my room, the issues are always, how do you want it submitted?
Okay.
And that comes from the diversity of what we do. If it's a written assignment that's not on a forum, do you want me to just type it into a text box? Can I do it in Google Docs? And all the kids have Google Docs accounts, of course.
Okay.
Can I do it in a word processor? If it looks like a word sheet, can I fill this out electronically? Um, really, I mean, and then the other side of that is, this looks like a worksheet. Do you mind if I print it and hand it to you?
Hmm. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's amazing to me that even kids in a technology based course still want to do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and I'm very open minded in terms of, you know, if I'm looking at content,
Mhm.
um, I don't care how you submit it.
Yeah.
Um, but if I'm looking at a technical skill, how you submit it becomes very important.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Well, that's helpful. Great. And then in terms of, do you ever assign different, do you ever assign different versions of assignments to different students, or assign, specific student specific assignments? Is there ever a case where that
yes.
happens? Okay.
Yeah, I have
Mhm.
students, I mean, on the reduction of assignments, I have students
Okay.
who are on a modified curriculum every year.
Okay.
And that can be anything from the number of questions to submit to them at any given time. It can be, breaking into smaller pieces. So what they might see is, three little assignments, instead of one larger one.
Okay.
Um, it becomes extremely cumbersome to do that.
Okay.
Um, I've yet to find a system that really allows me to do that on a student by student basis without really having to look at, when I go back into the grade book, because the learning management system also provides you a grade book that really works.
Hmm.
Um, how to do groupings and how to do weightings of
Gotcha.
things can be
Mhm.
hard. And then on the enrichment end, um, it's very easy to put out pieces that are enrichment pieces for the kids who are solid and quick with their
Mhm.
work. But um, again, with the how do you make it into a solid assignment for them midstream, um,
Yeah.
without tilting the apple cart? Um,
And when you say enrichment activities, is that sort of like would that be, can you tell me what that means exactly?
well, if a student say is has shown proficiency with the pen tool in Illustrator, which can be really
Mhm.
challenging and takes most kids time to learn.
Mhm.
If a kid picks it up right away and can do the assignment that I've given in, a quarter of the time that the rest of the class is taken,
Sure.
what I would do is I'd have, an enrichment assignment,
Okay.
basically listed, try this for fun or try this for extra credit, um, where, it just gave a particularly challenging problem,
Mhm.
using the pen tool. How would you do, how would you draw, oh, I don't know, um, something with a lot of curves in it and a lot of curve, straight line, something that requires real proficiency.
That makes sense. Okay. And then can you tell me a little bit about the types of settings you would expect to see when you're setting up your assignments? Is there anything any in particular that are really important, or you use a lot, or you need to have?
Um, well, first of all, the ability to attach a rubric.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm a great believer in, and that a rubric that I can see and that the students can see,
Mhm.
right at, but not having it clutter the screen, if you know what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Some sort of an interface where, in any assignment that I'm setting up, a click here to see the assessment rubric
Mhm.
is really helpful, because that gives the choice of the student who just needs to see, okay, I need to do this, 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 versus the kid who's sitting there saying, okay, how do I get an A on this?
Mhm.
Because they do sit next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
and that's really important. In terms of other things, one of the things um, that I always struggle with is the ability to, distinguish, to pile together different kinds of response tools.
Mhm.
It's like, some things are really well suited to, to a short written answer.
Mhm.
Um, Other things are more suited to, rearrange concepts, or, so having that ability to um, really fit in one assignment multiple kinds of response tools. That's very important.
Mhm.
Um, and
Okay.
then, of course, the idea of being able to reference it back to what instructional materials go along with it. So,
Okay. Okay.
and as I said, I kind of cheat, with 20 years of having written out, step by steps as to, how does this process work, and, sort of edit it, basically I've written my own textbook in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um,
Together.
and and I continually edit that, but being able to refer back to that and say, hey, go to this slide deck or go to this article that I suggested you read, is again super important. So having that, and then the other thing that, of course, the district is pushing for is how does everything tie to standards,
Yeah. Okay. Mhm.
and finding seamless ways to do that.
Mhm. Sure.
I'm a real believer in that.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest disconnects is that finding tools that are good planning tools and good writing tools, um, is not the same thing as having a good curriculum, scaffolding tool and that kind of thing. And if somebody could solve that problem, I think we would win a lot more in terms of what is it the student should know at each step in the game,
Yeah.
which is, it's so easy to blow off that idea of standards when you say that, oh, that's
Yeah.
undoable, or you say that, I'll write the curriculum and then I'll go back and pick the standards out afterwards so that I can satisfy my administrator.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't, that's not the way it should work.
That makes sense. Yeah. Definitely. Great. So it's really all this is really helpful to hear. I have a little bit of a more call it like like more of an abstract question. So just answer this as best you can. I'm going to ask you to complete the following sentences. So first sentence is creating and scheduling assignments currently feels like what?
It's pretty easy because
Okay.
I have a huge library.
Okay. Mhm. And then I want creating and scheduling assignments to feel like what?
Um, More customized, um, not falling back on what I already know, and I'd like to be able to do more differentiation. I'd like to be able to do even more on the fly work.
Yeah. Okay. Can you and can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what do you mean on the fly work?
Like, as I said, customizing,
Oh,
um,
okay.
as we're going.
Mhm.
It's something that you only get to when you have the time to do it. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and usually that's not when the content is challenging. Usually it's when the content is
Mhm.
very manageable.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need it more when you really are running around addressing real questions,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, instead of, the lighter things that kids get.
Mhm. Actually, going back to your first response about, creating assignment currently feels easy. And I feel like you've talked quite a bit about like Moodle and your positive experience with that. Can you tell me a little bit more about like what's like the one or two things about that you feel like Moodle provides you that has been really helpful in your process of creating and assigning or and scheduling assignments?
I'll tell you honestly, the biggest thing is that I'm actually lucky enough that they're letting me administer my own Moodle site, which
Okay.
means that I can develop content over multiple years
Hmm.
and have it evolve instead of, um, start and stop. Early
Okay.
on, when I started with using LMSs,
Hmm.
um, I went through several experiences of getting things, sort of set into a framework, and
Hmm.
then, oh, let's change courses and try a different system, and
Hmm.
having all of the work go poof
Hmm.
or be very, very cumbersome to try and get back. Um, so having that advantage over time really, really works. The idea of have something and stick to it and evolve it. It's the same kind of thing when you are using um, a textbook or a learning system of some other sort. You're much better off sticking with a good program and having that program evolve over time than you are with reinventing the wheel every time you adopt a new material.
Actually, I would love to dig into that a little bit more. So is that so would it be a correct assumption to say then that you do copy and reuse materials from year to year?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And how is that just through, so how would you, is it just through Moodle that you do that? Or is there, how do you approach that? Do you always use the same assignments or,
Um, well, not always the same assignments, but the same body of assignments, the same unit structure.
okay.
And, since I have everything, sort of
Mhm.
classified and filed, it doesn't matter whether I pull, um, the layers assignment that deals with a guitar shop versus the layers assignment that deals with flowers.
Mhm.
And I sort of do that based on the personality of the students. So, having that choice is kind of nice. So it's not, it's flexible, but yes, there is a lot of consistency in it.
Mhm. Okay.
And also, since I'm teaching software, as software changes, um, I never put out an assignment without making sure that it's up to date in terms of technical content, in terms of student interest,
Mhm.
in terms of reading level of students that I'm dealing with, because that fluctuates from year to year.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I don't believe in lobbing softballs at kids who can read perfectly well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, I just realized that we are at the half hour and I want to be respectful of your time. So I guess if there's any, is there any, before we sort of hang up, is there any final thoughts or suggestions, that we didn't discuss that, about assignments or creating assignments or any sort of topic that you thought we would cover and then we didn't, that you can think of?
No, I think that it was actually a really good experience for me too to go back over and really spend half an hour thinking about it. So,
Fantastic. Great. Well, it's been really helpful for us. And again, just thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have the call and we have tons of notes and I'm looking forward to looking through these and making some changes. So I hope you have a great
and
weekend.
just so in terms of product out there,
Mhm.
um, you guys are one of the best and
Ah.
have been for years, because you do get the instructional piece, the content piece, and the keep it up to date piece. But also don't lose the content,
No,
you know.
definitely.
All
Great.
right.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Have a
much.
good one.